What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Natal Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be continuing our Astrology 101 series, and we'll be taking a look at annual profections. So, let's get into it. Now, there's many different levels to astrology. You have natal astrology, which really focuses on the energies contained within your own personal birth chart, how they relate to your personal karma, as well as your evolutionary purpose within this lifetime. So we look at your natal chart as a way to give insight into those things that I just mentioned, and finding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, blind spots, all of that. Then we know that there's another layer of astrology that deals with the transits and how we are affected by them on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis. And one thing I'm always telling people about is to take a look at your solar return chart. Profections adds another layer to that. Myself as the astrologer, when I give a transit reading or a solar return reading, one of the things I do pay attention to is this thing called profections. And to keep it very simple and straightforward, profections is a predictive technique that allows me, the astrologer, to see at the given period, for a given period of time, what planet, sign, and house is most active for an individual during that time period. Okay, so the more you study astrology, you see that it is a mathematical science, and things work together based upon the math, and as well as like a lot of sequencing. Okay, and with profections, we see that each year of our life, every age we turn, there is a particular house, sign, and planet that takes center stage for that year. I will use my own example of how I understand this information. For me, when I was learning about profection, I said, okay, our lives are like a TV show. It's all about us. And just like a TV show, we have different seasons. You could look at season 1 as your first year of life. Okay, season 7, so on and so forth, equating that to the age. Now, just like with a TV show, each season may focus more on a particular topic. So in the first season, we're getting to know the individual and their world and how they interact with their world. Then let's say by season 5, right, which in using this chart right here, that would be age 5, right? We see an emphasis on the 6th house. So in this season, we really get in tune with the person's day-to-day reality, their routine, things with their health. The theme for this season may be a quest for self-improvement, okay? If it's the age of 6 or the age of 18, that particular season is going to focus on relationships, okay? So, just to reiterate, profections deal with the activation of a particular house, sign, and planet. And when that, based on your age, and when that house, planet, and sign is active, those themes are going to dominate within our lives. And this is used as a predictive technique because when whatever house is activated is going to put in motion the things seen in the natal chart, that what we will call the natal promise, things that are supposed to come to pass. So if a person has 10th house energy, and like let's say they have a moon in their 10th house, and they're 9 years old, that is going to be their 10th house profection year. One of the things that an event can be stimulated by the activation of this house. So the person natally has a moon in their 10th house. Then when we add on the solar return chart, there's activity that we would need to pay attention to the 10th house within that chart, or what other themes in that chart would coincide with the 10th house, which more times than not they do. Then we want to look at the transits and pay attention towards the triggers that it makes. So maybe within this year, for a while, Neptune stations at a point where it is directly aspecting this person's 10th house moon. Okay, so what we can deduct at the age of 9, an event can happen in terms of manifesting where the mother ascends to a certain point in her career. She gets a new career. The native is introduced to something that triggers his love or their love for a particular thing, and they decide at that moment, I want to be this when I get older. This is the thing I want to have for my career. Or anything can happen, all 10th house related. The fact is that for that year, the 10th house is stimulated, and any aspects made towards that natal 10th house or the solar 10th house is going to trigger fated events in the individual's life. So the really cool thing about profections is that it's quite, once you're conscious of it, it's quite easy to understand what year you are in. Okay, so I want you to pay attention here to the first house. The first house corresponds to our first year of life, before we're actually 1 year old. Okay, so we can look at that as 0. Okay, so when we are 12 years old, it comes back to the first house. So rather than 12 years old being the end of the cycle, it's actually 11 years old, or every 11 years the cycle comes to an end. Okay, because that first year of life is counting as 0. So once you're 12, you'll know that every 12 years I'm having a first house perfected year. This lines up with your Jupiter return. So whether you're 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, so on and so forth, the emphasis will be on your ascendant, your physical body, how you interact with the world around you. So, as I said before, if you have any natal first house planets, they are going to come into emphasis and play a major part. So let's say you have Mars in your first house. Every 12 years, you're going to experience a year where you have a little bit more willpower, or a little bit more initiative, or your tendencies around anger and expression of that are going to come into play, right? Then from there, you really get the gauge of it. So use 12 as your baseline number of understanding. So if you're 26, you know that, okay, I'm 2 spots away from 24, which was my first house perfected year. So I'm 26, I just count 2, and I'm in my 3rd house perfected year. Okay, so like I said, use 12, the multiples of 12, as your baseline for understanding of this. All right, so you always want to be conscious of that. And years in which you have a perfected house that has natal energy or solar return energy, it's going to be of more significance. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and I'm going to give an example of how the profections trigger fated events in our lives and how that can manifest. But before I do that, I just want to let you know that you can never just use profections, transits, and natal charts alone. You will always need to incorporate the solar return chart. All right, but to make this easier upon yourself, this is why your natal chart should be you should focus on memorizing the positions within your natal chart, knowing exactly what degrees you have particular planets at. So when you view transits or you view solar returns and you see them at in particular signs or at certain degrees, you know automatically what relationship that's having towards your natal energy. But let's take a look at how we lump all of these things together.